Hello, hey, good morning. It is President's Day. I have no work today, so I have no idea how long this is going to be. I'm just going to finish up chapter 24 in Genesis because I think I've been there for I don't know how long, how many episodes now. Nevertheless, I'm going to finish that and then we'll get into the death of Abraham, which then the blessing from Abraham will be passed on to Isaac. And I've been reading I finished my entire read through of the Bible for like the third or fourth time. And so I'm already back to where I am currently with these discussions. And I'm ahead of where I am right now, and I'm into Jacob's story. And it's so interesting how the second or third or fourth or fifth or 20th time that you've read something, it's like where God has me now in this season is different than where I was like a year ago when I read it. And so the character of Jacob, he's kind of troubling to me. Isaac's son, I don't, I think if I met him, I don't know. In real life, I feel like I wouldn't like him, which is interesting. Like I don't think I would at all. Maybe when he's older, but I do draw, interestingly, I do draw similarities to him when I look at my past, like the past renditions of myself. I do, and that's why where I'm currently reading him in my I don't know how many run through this is fourth, fifth time I've read the Bible through its entirety. I think since it reminds me of like a previous rendition of myself, I'm not really into it, him as a character. But it's good to know that God will use people that are imperfect because we're all imperfect. And I'm not saying that I'm any better than Jacob in the Bible is at all. I would, in critical of myself, I would say I'm probably worse. But I am. Well, I don't know. I don't really hold myself when I compare myself to other people. I don't really hold myself up to a human rubric. I guess I can only compare myself to who I was yesterday, right? And so today we'll be picking up, finishing Genesis chapter 24, and where we left off last time, and the time before that, and time before that is where the head servant of Abraham, he met Rebecca. No, not Rebecca. He met him. Is it Rebecca? Well, what's her name again? Oh, yeah, it is Rebecca. I'm getting the names of the wives mixed up now that I'm in different parts of the Bible. So it's Rebecca. He met Rebecca after he prayed a really bold prayer that had a lot of specificity to it. And I was commenting about how it's amazing that God answered him and all the specificity. Like he met him where he requested God to meet him in regards to answering the prayer exactly as he prayed it. It was wild. That was wild. And so that was like verse, what was it? 15 is where it says, before he had finished praying, Rebecca came out with her jar on her shoulder. So now I'll pick up on verse 26, where the head servant is saying, then the man bowed down and worshiped the Lord, saying, praise be to the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who has not abandoned his kindness and faithfulness to my master. As for me, the Lord has led me on the journey to the house of my master's relatives. The girl ran and told her mother's household about these things. Now Rebekah had a brother named Laban, and he hurried out to the man at the spring. As soon as he had seen the nose ring and the bracelets on his sister's arm, and had heard Rebekah tell what the man said to her, he went out to the man and found him standing by the camels near the spring. And he said, come, you who are blessed by the Lord, he said. Why are you standing out here? I have prepared the house and a place for the camels. So the man went to the house, and the camels were unloaded. Straw and fodder were brought for the camels, and water for him and his men to wash their feet. Then food was set before him, but he said, I will not eat until I have told you what I have to say. Then tell us, Laban said. I think it's pronounced Laban. I'm not sure. Which is interesting because now I'm in the part where Jacob if they're the same people, they are. He's his character is similar to Jacob's in regards to manipulation and whatnot. So as I'm reading this, I'm going to be looking for that. So he said, I am Abraham's servant. The Lord has blessed my master abundantly, and he has become wealthy. He has given him sheep and cattle, silver and gold, men servants and maidservants, and camels and donkeys. My master's wife Sarah has borne him a son in her old age, and he has given him everything he owns. And my master made me swear an oath and said, You must not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, in whose land I live, but to go to my father's family and to my own clan and get a wife for my son. Then I asked my master, What if the woman will not come back with me? He replied, The Lord, before whom I have walked, will send his angel with you and make your journey a success so that you can get a wife for my son, for my own clan, and from my father's family. Then, when you go to my clan, you will be released from my oath. Even if they refuse to give her to you, you will be released from my oath. When I came to this spring today, I said, O Lord, God of my master Abraham, if you will please grant me success to the journey on which I have come. See, I am standing beside this spring, and if a maiden comes out to draw water, and I say to her, Please let me drink a little water from your jar, and if she says to me, Drink, and I'll draw water for your camels too, let her be the one that the Lord has chosen for my master's son. And so that's just, he's reiterating the sequence of events that just played out before him. And he's like, he's at their house and he's explaining why he's there, right? So picking up at verse 25, this is chapter 24, if I didn't state that. Before I finished praying in my heart, Rebecca came out with her jar on her shoulder. She went down to the spring and drew water, and I said to her, Please give me a drink. She quickly lowered her jar from her shoulder and said, Drink, and I'll water your camels too. So I drank, and she watered the camels also. I asked her, Whose daughter are you? She said, The daughter of Bethuel, son of Nahor, whom Milcah bore to him. Then I put the ring in her nose and the bracelets on her arm, and I bowed down and worshiped the Lord. I praised the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who had led me on the right road to get the granddaughter of my master's brother for his son. Now, if you will show kindness and faithfulness to my master, tell me, and if not, tell me, so I may know which way to turn. Laban and Bethuel answered, This is from the Lord. We can say nothing to you one way or the other. Here is Rebekah. Take her and go, and let her become the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has directed. When Abraham's servant heard what they said, he bowed down to the ground before the Lord. Then the servant brought out gold and silver jewelry and articles of clothing and gave them to Rebekah. He also gave costly gifts to her brother and to her mother. Then he and the men who were with him ate and drank spent the night there. When they got up the next morning, he said, Send me on my way to my master. But her brother and her mother replied, Let the girl remain with us 10 days or so, then you may go. But he said to them, Do not detain me. Now that the Lord has granted success to my journey, send me on my way so I may go to my master. Then they said, Let's call the girl and ask her about it. So they called Rebekah and asked her, Will you go with this man? I will go, she said. So they sent their sister Rebekah on her way along with her nurse and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, Our sister, may you increase to the thousands upon thousands. May your offspring possess the gates of their enemies. Then Rebekah and her maids got ready and mounted their camels and went back with the man. So the servant took Rebekah and left. Now Isaac had come from Beer-lahai-roi, for he was living in the Negev. He went out to the field one evening to meditate, and as he looked up, he saw camels approaching. Rebekah also looked up and saw Isaac. She got down from her camel and asked the servant, Who is that man in the field coming to meet us? He is my master, the servant answered. So she took her veil and covered herself. Then the servant told Isaac all he had done. Isaac brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah, and he married Rebekah. So she became his wife, and he loved her, and Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. We got through it, 24. So what I love about this, especially now since I've read the story of Jacob a bit, is it seems like Laban here, later, when I talk about the story of Jacob, he is manipulative, and he kind of performs a sleight of hand orally on Jacob, which is par for the course because that's how Jacob is himself. He is a liar, and it's it's interesting because he gets dealt the hand that he deals out to others in some respects. And I can see a lot of like the cyclical storytelling and the narration just repeating itself, this pattern over and over of people making mistakes through lies and then God blessing them anyway, which is interesting, and I'll get to that. And Laban, he seems, I don't know, the depiction of him here, the vibe that I get from him, his reply where him and his wife say, "This is from the Lord. We can say nothing to you one way or the other." That's that's a noble reply, right? Like I would think that's a noble reply. That is that seems selfless and from a good place, right? In your heart. You would think that if you heard it. Now, knowing what he acted like later, which I'll just give you spoiler alert. What happens is Jacob sees one of his daughters and oh, where's it at? He sees one of his daughters and she's very beautiful. And yeah, Laban. Yep, same dude. She's very beautiful and he's like, I want to marry her. Or Laban actually comes up to him and is like, hey, your family, you shouldn't be working for free, because he's working for him because he ran from his brother Esau because of a lie. And so he's like, name your wages, right? And Jacob's like, hey, I will work for you 7 years if I can just marry your really hot daughter, because he's attracted to her. And so he agrees to that. He's like, but his wording with his agreement is different in a sense where it doesn't really encompass that he has to hold to it in a way where you can call him a bold-faced liar. But basically what happens is Jacob works for him for like 7 years, and then Laban, he gives him the daughter that Jacob doesn't want because he has 2 daughters. And so that type of character is who he is. So when I read this statement of, this is from the Lord, we can say nothing to you one way or the other, what I really think is going on is he heard from this head servant that Abraham, right? He told him. Yeah. So he said, I am Abraham's servant. The Lord has blessed my master abundantly, and he has become wealthy, given him sheep and cattle, silver and gold, men servants and maidservants, and camels and donkeys. So I would think that this Laban guy hears this, and he's like, yeah, you can take my daughter. This is the Lord's work here. Take her, right? Because now he's going to have access to this resource, I would figure, at least by extension. It seems strategically sound. And, there's some portion of that where you can't blame him in some sense because, I mean, I'm sure you've heard people on the internet or social media tell you that people are the equation of like the 5 people they hang out with the most, which I agree with. That seems sound. And so you want people in your network, your social network, that are going to, that wherein the relationship between you and them is going to be like a symbiotic and complementary relationship to each other, where you both benefit from it, right? And so he's probably thinking something like that, I would figure. When I first read it the first time, I was like, man, that's a great response. But now, knowing his character more later on, I'm like, maybe not. Regardless, Isaac, he got what he prayed for. Abraham got what he prayed for, and what he commanded the head servant to do, requested him to do. And the head servant God blessed him to the exact specificity of his prayer, which is wild. It's really wild. There's so many times when I can look at my past or something I've done, and it'll kind of dilute my perception of myself. And therefore, by extension, it kind of dilutes what I feel is the, what would I say, probability or the potentiality of the relationship between myself and God, because I start wrapping godly power with my minuscule human understanding of it, because I'm thinking that God's blessings are correlated to the character that I am, right? And I can start being so critical of myself and my past mistakes that I think that my prayers don't have the power to actually be answered in the manner in which they're answered here. And so it's been challenging and encouraging to read characters in the Bible that have lied, bold-faced lies, and see God bless them regardless. And I actually pulled up an article because I was just curious, because as I've been reading Jacob, who is Isaac's son, he is someone that I would not want to associate with in real life at all. I'd have a big problem with him. And this promise that God gave Abraham, it goes through the bloodline down there. And how it gets to Jacob is through coercion, and it is through lies and sneaky tactics, basically, which come from Rebecca, this wife that Isaac just got. She tells Jacob to do this X, Y, and Z thing that is a lie in order to get the blessing from Isaac as he's dying. And there's something really deep about that. How, you can call them curses in your family seem to repeat over and over. And it takes someone different that all of the family members are probably going to label as, that person's probably, they think they're too good for us, or they don't know where they're from, right? They, because people that enact the same behavior as their family over and over through the generations, even though the behavior is negative, I think psychologically we kind of build a relationship with it, right? That's just, when you think of a last name and you think of a behavior that happens with that family, it's kind of like a badge of honor, regardless if it's a good or bad behavior, right? Let's say small town culture, if you had a family who had a bunch of, I don't know, really great bar brawlers or whatever, you have this reputation of being tough or fighting, and you can kind of look at that behavior as a badge of honor in a way, even if it is carried out in a malevolent manner. And if, say, one person was born in that lineage or that family tree and they don't want to take part in that anymore, or maybe they just want to grab aspects of it and then apply it in their life in a way that they can acquire positive benefits from it, from maybe being tough or being able to defend yourself or being able to face your fears and whatnot, they can take positive components of it and carry that with them, but they don't actually carry out the entire action of going to the bar and fighting people or going to a bar at all. You know, people will think that people from families or just people in general, they can start to feel like that person would be, they forget where they came from, or they think they're too good for us now. You can apply that and transpose that scenario in many different places in your life, right? Throughout. it doesn't have to be even people. It can just be the conversation you have with yourself when you're trying to change from a habit. And I see happens over and over here in the Bible in this story. It's so crazy now looking back on it because I'm like 4 chapters ahead. And it's really amazing. I would encourage people when they're reading the Bible, you can go back, right? Go back and look at the characters and what your understanding of them in the future says about their past, right? Like, I always think that we shouldn't really judge other people at all, even those that vehemently disagree with us, because psychologically or philosophically, there's a reason why they have came to that conclusion that they're at, and it could be things that are out of their control, right? They could have been born into something, and I say out of their control loosely because you know at a certain point you have control of your life. You do. But that's also a slippery slope because there are some people that are so lost and they can't see anything. It's like a veil is over their face, and they literally have to have others come to them and like lift the veil in order to even like see light, right? Everything's dark. Like all possibilities of change are gone. And I would say that's probably true for people. Oh, you could take the example of like Alcoholics Anonymous, for instance, like people that go there. There are some people that get brought there by friends, and those people, they may be at a place where they don't see the chances of them ever being sober, right? Ever. And then when they go and meet a bunch of people that may have been in a place that is worse than what their perception is of where they are at in life, they're like, it is possible, right? It is possible. And so when I say people all have control of their life up to a point, it's true, but there's sometimes that people need to get help and pulled up. And that's a complicated subject because then you can ask, well, why does God even allow that to happen? Because there's some people that it doesn't seem like they ever get out. Or there's some people from our perspective, they never have a chance, which is interesting to think. And I was looking at lies, just characters that lie in the Bible, because I've been thinking about that a lot lately because just in my own life, I have told God I was going to do things, and then I'll feel like maybe my perception was wrong, and I'll go against what I told God I was going to do. And I don't know if it's an out and out lie, but I know that it's not out and out truth, right? And I would like absolutely, I want to say crucify myself, but I look positively on crucifixion. So I would say I really used to beat myself up over that a lot. I mean, I still do. I hold myself accountable for things. And I really hold truth in a high regard, like very high regard. And so when I would find myself moving my behavior out of alignment with what I am saying to God or myself or other people, it really damages my self perception of my character a lot, which I think is rightfully so. But there's something to God giving people grace in the Bible despite their character deficiencies that it shows us that his understanding and perception of the world is far greater than ours ever could be. And no one is really beyond saving. And that's hard for me to really admit as a person because, well, we'll talk about the character. Even Abraham, like I kind of struggled with him lying about his wife. But it's like that example wherein someone, let's say, you're in World War II, you have, this is an example that's common and given. You have, let's say you have Jewish people hiding in your basement. Nazis come up to your door and ask you, "Hey, are there any Jews there?" Are you going to lie for their sake? Or are you going to tell the truth and trust God with the result? Like, what do you think God want you to do? And I was researching that on the internet, like that was one example I seen. And let me look this. Let me get my prayer journal up. I actually want to talk about this because it really troubles me in a way. And I'm kind of, I would say, wrestling with God about it a bit, I think, because there are examples that I've noted in the Bible where people lie, or like it seems like God is not condemning them for lying. And there's also scenarios where people lie and God reward them for it, right? And so I think it comes down to their heart, for one. Like, for instance, that scenario that I just spoke of, if you lied and it saved the Jewish people, or saved anybody, it doesn't have to be, but in that scenario, World War II and Nazis and whatnot, it's like God would reward that, right? That seems pretty, like, that's easy, to digest. But when you start thinking about that really hard and like building the scaffolding on like the structure that really forms your perception of who God is, it can start to fill cracks in your faith if you think that God is something he isn't, wherein you can start manipulating that and think that he rewards bad behavior, because you can twist and contort stuff in your head, turn stuff upside down, you know, and it can just absolutely obliterate your faith if you take the word of the Bible or something like that and twist it to your own selfish means, for your own selfish means and for your own intentions to benefit yourself. Because we see Abraham, when he lied about his wife, like God was okay with it, apparently. And yeah, that's hard for me. It just is hard for me. It's still hard for me thinking about that. It is. Like I seen there was a scenario where Moses lied to I have it here. Moses lied to Pharaoh and isn't condemned. Right? And I guess that's weird. The Bible repeats stuff over and over. Like Abraham lied to a Pharaoh too and didn't get condemned. And so it's really hard for me to contemplate that, even because I hold truth in such a high regard. But maybe my perception of truth is too minuscule, too small as to what truth actually is. That's hard. And so that's one thing that went through my head about this chapter as I was rereading it. And another thing is, I just love the image of Isaac meditating in a field, and he looks up and there's his wife, right? Like, you think, what do you think he could have been meditating on? Anything, which they use the word meditate in this verse. And where is it at? It says, he went out to the field one evening to meditate, and as he looked up, he saw camels approaching, and then Rebekah and the head servant. we're on the camels, right? And in my book, it says, in my Bible, it says, the meaning of the Hebrew word for this word is uncertain. So they don't know what it is apparently. I wonder if this, if I can look that up. I wonder, where is it? Genesis 24. And then verse what? Oh, verse 63. Man, this chapter is so long. I wonder. Yeah, it says to meditate in the Hebrew translation to English. That's interesting. But yeah, I wonder if he could have been probably praying for his wife, you would think so. Or because the head servant's gone, they would notice him missing, obviously, and his father commanded the head servant to go find a wife. So I'm guessing Isaac's praying for her, and then he looks up, and it just seems like a dramatic scene. It'd be really sick, I think. And so that's really beautiful. And I have actually been doing that in my personal life now, and I don't think it's any coincidence of and I don't think it's any coincidence that there's things that happen in my life and it correlates with what I'm reading in scripture. And so I've like been looking into like it's called like no sleep deep rest, which is basically just another word for meditation. And then I come up upon this story and then I just noticed that, right? The first time that he was like meditating. And so I've been like doing that, as I said in the last episode. And it's not really the same as I don't know. I wouldn't say it's yoga, for instance, but like when I do it, I'm just like asking God to come with me, and I gave that depiction of what like my vision, quote unquote, was the last time when I was doing it, which is just the images that are popping up in my head. And it's been helping me be less anxious, that's for sure, 100%. And it's so crazy how God like pops up stuff in your life that correlates with what you need at that time, which is a good example of what's happening here, right? Because Isaac looks up, and there's Rebecca coming in right there. He gives you what you need at the exact moment you need it, not earlier, not later, because you're not ready for it then. Or maybe if it's, later, you should have got it earlier, right? And I've been really leaning into that this season as well. Just trusting God's timing with everything. Because it's so hard trusting God's timing. Like it just is. Like I don't care how faithful people are. It's hard. It is so hard to trust God's timing with stuff. It's so hard. Because we're surrounded by people that we are people that live in an earthly realm, right? Our perception of time is different than God's. We can't even really comprehend it, what's going on up there and what he's like implementing in our lives. We can only put together the pieces that he allows us to really perceive, and not only allows us to perceive, but that we're wise enough to perceive, and that our journey in our faith and the building of our knowledge structures and foundations are at a point where we can even comprehend it or even hear it by choice too. Like a great scenario and depiction in the Bible is when Jesus comes out on the water, and Peter and the disciples are on the boat, and Peter sees Jesus walking towards him. And Peter's like, if that's you, Lord, allow me like to walk out to you on the water, right? And he's walking on the water, in the moment that his focus goes off Jesus, he sinks down to the, in the water. And then Jesus pulls him up again, right? Which is one of my favorite scenes in the Bible. And that's so true in life, because I feel like we have so much going on all the time, and we're so concerned about all this stuff that really doesn't matter that much. Whether it be stemming from our desire to just fit in, our desire to feel like we have a significant purpose because we are calibrating our own definition of godly purpose, quote unquote, according to someone else's purpose and calling by the stuff that they have. Or maybe they have something that we want right now. There's so many things in life that get caught up in our like mental webways of understanding. It's it's so hard to trust God's timing. It's so hard. And that's another reason why even though I it's hard for me to see these characters in the Bible that I love and adore, it's hard for me to contemplate them lying, like bold-faced lie, out and out. But I can relate to it 100% because I've lied to God even unknowingly through my actions, right? And not even think twice about it, which is it's not surprising. And it's been interesting just in my life lately, wherein there's a lot of things that I've been thinking lately that God's been kind of like pulling back the covers from. I'm getting new perspectives on things that's been in my life for quite some time, which is, a sign of growth for sure. But it's also uncomfortable. It's greatly uncomfortable to realize that the chair you're sitting in, as comfortable as it is, it's not for you anymore. And you need to get off the seat and start walking and go into the unknown, just like Abraham was called in the beginning of this story. And that the way God has been doing that in my life is through like reading the Bible and seeing these characters again from like a new lens because my knowledge base has increased every time I read the Bible, not only in the Bible, but just with philosophy and psychology and life lessons and just what I've learned about people and my connections with those that at one time I would say had something that I wanted, but now I look at things like that and things that I used to want in a previous season, and my opinion has totally changed on it. It's so crazy. Like I've been experimenting with things like switching my rest day from Sunday to Saturday because when I was serving on Sunday and leading class, it just like put my brain into like work mode. And it was not a work day. It was not a rest day. What I should say, it was not a rest day. And I'll say that, and I'll preface that with well, I guess aforementioned. I will say that that might not apply to everyone because I work essentially like 6 days a week, and so me serving at my church and getting into work mode would affect me more than maybe another person would, just based on the differences in our life and the journey, where we're at in our journeys, right? This adventure. And so I was switching my rest day from Saturday to Sunday, and I stopped serving for the past like couple weeks, just taking a break, seeing how it felt. I even start working out on Sundays. And I've also went into like the church service, having not served right before it, because it having your brain go into like serving mode, it's it's not it's not rest. It's not at all. And a lot of people's Sabbath day are Sundays. Who said it one time? Was it on Tim Ross's podcast? I don't know. Someone said it. They were like, the Sabbath day, you're supposed to rest, and rest is not worship. And I was like, I don't know if that's 100% entirely true or not. I think it's context matters, which the more and more I read the Bible, the more I see that context matters for so many different things, like that lying scenario, for instance. But I've been trying to see if going into church services, not serving beforehand would matter. It does for sure, 100%. Like some people listening will be like, well, duh. But the way that our religion is kind of set up, like in person, we really celebrate getting together and being in community, which I agree, it's fantastic. There's something really powerful, even if you just look at it from a non-spiritual perspective of large groups of people getting together for a common cause. That's really powerful, and it's amazing. And we're supposed to be in community as Christians. And it does matter. So why I say that is when you start serving, you can start telling yourself that it's filling you when it's really not, just because your understanding of it is based on the pretense that it fills you. Serving fills you, right? Which we are supposed to serve the Lord. And I even talked to the group that I talked to the leader of the little subgroup or subsection of the church that I serve in, and I told her, I was like, I'm just trying it out with my new schedule because not serving at the time slot that I was, just because I found that like I said, it puts my thoughts into work mode, and it does not lend me into positioning myself to be open to receive the word. Not really. And I did some like historical searching in regards to my history. And almost every revelation I've had was by myself. A lot of them. Even from church sermons, like I was watching them by myself. And it was because all the noise, the outside noise was cut out. Like I was solely focused on, hey, what do I receive from this? I wasn't focused on, am I going to beat traffic out, of the church parking lot? Am I going to meet my wife today at church? Am I going to, meet some new friends here at church? Am I going to, do X, Y, and Z things? All of that was gone. Right. And I believe it's possible to be that focused in person in large groups if you're disciplined enough and in the right season. But there's something to that. And so I've been experimenting with things like that. And it's been revelatory. It's been really revelatory. Yeah, it's been amazing, actually. It's really grown me to like challenge myself there and just try to put myself in a different mode of thinking. It has been weird. And I think I said this in the previous episode too, like some of the things that I've been seeing, I don't like it. Like, it's not comfortable. It always sucks changing. And you know, it's it's so weird because mainstream Christianity ties up like serving is just good when there are some people. I think a lot of people sign up to serve, not really to serve, but to make friends, which I think you can do both. There's a duplicity in the action that will benefit you in that manner, and that's smart. But I would say don't ever create like a straitjacket and put it on yourself based on your current perception of something or the perception that you have adopted through culture or other people. Like you should always be analyzing it and going back and being like, is this for me in this season? Right? And you can take that and apply that to anything, not just Christian, anything, 100%. And that's a difficult conversation to have with yourself. It's a difficult conversation for me to have with myself about my perception of lying in the Bible and how God perceives it. That's hard for me. It is because it does have ramifications and consequences to how I see God. And I'm not saying it's not negative at all. It just is more vast, right? And deeper, I would say. There's more volume to it. It's not that I look at it through a judgmental lens, as in it's negative or positive. It's just deeper because, well, my entire perspective on faith is that it's positive, right? Even if stuff doesn't feel good, it's positive. That's why I keep bringing up that Hebrews chapter 5, verse 8, where Jesus learned obedience through his suffering. And that's probably my favorite verse in the Bible, maybe right now, I would say. Because my human perception of suffering, I don't like it at all. But God uses it in ways that I can't comprehend nor understand. And I have to admit to myself that I may never understand it. I won't ever understand it in its entirety. And so when we start looking at the actions of characters in the Bible or the actions of ourselves in our own story and where we're at, we constantly have to be filtering it through this like constant conversation with God of like, is this good for me right now? Is my understanding correct? What am I missing here? Who am I missing here? Right? All the time. Because and time goes by so fast. I can't believe we're almost into March already. 2024. It's ridiculous. It goes by so fast. And you can stay in a rut doing the same thing for a long time. Just like the people when Moses led them out of Egypt, they stayed in the wilderness far longer than God intended them to. It even got to a point where God just wanted to nuke them, basically. He wanted to wipe out that whole generation and bring about a new one. And Moses like pled for him. Was like, no, don't do that, man. Please don't kill all these people, right? Because God was like, yeah, this is no bueno. Because they were worshiping idols, and they were just all their value hierarchy and their perception of their religion was all contorted and twisted, right? A part of Egypt never left them. They really didn't leave Egypt. And that can happen all the time. In real life, I find myself doing it all the time. And I find myself going through habits in a circular manner where if I'm not brutally honest with myself, I'll just keep repeating the same behavior over and over and over. Even if the behavior looks different, even if it has a different skin on it, it's still the same thing. Even if the thoughts are different, it's the same thing. And that also goes into like in psychology, they talk about the subconscious and like your shadow side or whatnot. It's like when you're repressing things that your subconscious knows you should be doing, it'll start manifesting in negative ways that you don't really understand. And if you're not really ever searching for it as to what I should be doing or why perhaps I should change my behavior, I don't think you'll ever really see the negative side effects of repressing something I don't think you really mentally equip yourself to even see it properly if you're not looking for it. It's really hard to find things that you're not looking for, right? It's really hard. It's like sometimes if you're talk about a needle in a haystack, if you're say you jump into a bale of hay or whatever, what would be bale? It'd be loosened, so it'd be let's say a pile of hay, and there's a needle in there. There's only one. There is a chance, sure, you'll jump into the hay pile and you'll poke yourself on that needle, right? And you could have an argument of like, well, perhaps my entire body jumping into the pile of haystack would increase the odds of really running into that needle. But you could poke yourself with that needle and then just throw it out, even if you found it. Whereas if you were searching for a needle in a haystack, it may take you 20 years, but at least your intentions are correct and you're on the right path, right? And God blesses people who are on the right path. Like he knows the intentions of your heart seems to be so important in the Bible. So important that the actions that people take, even if they're negative, even if I don't like them personally, like when I'm reading stuff that the characters do in the Bible, stuff that I can personally relate to in regards to previous renditions of myself, even if I have a personal quandary with it, I have to admit to myself that God honors those that are at least on the right path and making the effort to get somewhere, at least, right? Like Abraham, he knocked up his wife's maidservant for a son, which was an idea of his wife's, and then his wife, it brought contention to the entire family. And it's like you could argue that, yeah, God could, I've heard it before, God can use anything for anything, which is absolutely true. He created the universe, heavens, earth, all that. You know, he made something out of nothing. So you can argue our human perception, that seems logical. Let's knock up the maidservant. You know, let's bring about this promise of all the nations on earth be blessed through my seed. You know, we'll do it that way. Maybe God's been waiting for us to do this the entire time, right? Maybe God's been waiting for us to at least jump. He's just been sitting there. We're like on this ledge, and God's like, "Are you going to do it yet? Are you going to do it yet?" And then we can shift our perspectives of things happening around us in life to be like, okay, it was on me to actually do it this way. And God never had that plan for us ever. And so we can easily see how things can get twisted in our minds. And it's really good to see that God cares about the intentions of our heart the most. And he will cover for the mistakes that we make, you know. It's so good. Because I've done some really stupid stuff in my life, like really terrible to myself, mainly. I've done things that are rude to people, absolutely 100%. 100%. And the person I've hurt the most in my life is definitely myself. I would say without shadow of a doubt, it is 100% not even debatable. And when you realize that the person that feels the consequence of your actions the most is always yourself, that we really are responsible for not only our lives, but the development of our relationship with God, which should be like intertwined with it. When you start feeling the weight of that, it can cause a lot of anxiety and feel like it's way too much. But the way I've been able to shift it is it's kind of like it's not weightless because suffering produces it seems to be positive results biblically. Biblically, blah, biblically. But it's like, well, we can't just avoid all suffering, because without it, we are just wandering aimlessly. And God blesses those that are on the path. So you've heard like the term, pick up your cross, bear your own cross. And that's so true. That's so true. So if you get anything out of today, I would say God honors your intentions. He understands we're not perfect. He knows we're going to make mistakes. He knows that others are going to harm us with their mistakes. And in the same manner that we shouldn't condemn ourselves in a manner of absolution, wherein there's no rectifying it. We should look at ourselves as low enough where God has covered for our mistakes through his sacrificing of his son, the perfect being. And we shouldn't judge ourselves and condemn ourselves eternally. And we should apply that also to others, which that'll in itself open you up to even being on the right path or open to it at all in a lot of ways. And we have to trust God to align us and be open to feeling the tension of being self-analytical to what we're doing, while at the same time being disciplined enough to carry our cross even though it's heavy and it hurts. There's a tension and there's a wrestling with God that takes place every day. And it's hard and it's not pretty all the time. It's a complicated dance. I really believe that. God will honor you if you're on the right path. Even if you do things that you thought was God but wasn't. He knows. And so I'm going to end there today. I didn't even get into 25. I'll have to rename the title of this. It's what it is. We'll get to the death of Abraham next time. I will be going live Friday, I think. Like I said, in like 2 episodes ago, I'm kind of coming about this from a more artistic standpoint and an artistic perspective. I like the biblical discussions and the looking at them as an artist, really, and looking at the content I create here as an artist. And, I have sources to gain mentorship in regards to how to create my content here online. But I've really been feeling in my heart like 100% just God telling me, do it as I tell you. We'll figure it out as we go, irregardless of others and what they have done. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And so with that, I'm going to take off. I love you, and I thank you for coming. You have a great rest of your President's Day or whatever day you happen to see this on. And I know I've been coming on late in regards to the time stamp that I have allocated to start this time, and I've basically put it in a window of like 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. And so hit a notification bell if you want to like know when I'm going live and hop in. And if the way I want this to roll is to have a live discussion, there's 2 people in here now. I don't know who you are. I hope this was okay with you. I hope this was good for you, is what I hope. But if you ever join while I'm going live, and if you ever hear anything that you agree with, disagree with, or just thoughts that come to your head, just pop them in the chat, and we can organically manifest a knowledge base for each of us to better utilize in order, to better interface in this world, to equip us to interface with this world on a greater scale, I would say. And with greater purpose. Me and God are in a SmackDown fight right now. You're losing. Yeah, you always lose that fight. Don't fight it. Just let it go. So I love you and I thank you. Sharice, I'll be praying for you. And yeah, have a great rest of your day. God is good. I'll see you next time. See ya.